All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 179th Scientific Governance and Risk meeting here at MakerDAO. Today is Thursday, February 24th. My name is Peyton. I go by Pros11 online, and I'm one of the governance facilitators here at Maker, joined by a bunch of awesome other workers for Maker, as well as people generally interested in the DAO and the protocol and how it's running. As usual, we got a bit of an agenda to get through today. Meeting is being recorded for those of you that have noticed, so please try not to talk over one another. Any side comments or questions, we of course always welcome in our sidebar. You can use the raised hand feature here on Zoom if you want to join the speaking queue, though of course feel free to hop in if there's a moment to do so. That about covers it for at least for ground rules. Try to get everyone out here and participating in the conversation, so don't be too shy to speak up. Awesome. All right, so as far as agenda goes, we'll start as usual with our governance roundup, and we'll move into initiative updates. Today, that's going to be around ETHDenver, which a lot of the core unit members took part in. We've got a discussion topic selected today for is the DAO equipped to work with service provider CUs? And after that, if there's still time, we'll kind of tune in for open discussion. Anything that gets brought up either in the chat or in live questions that maybe doesn't quite fit into our pre-slated agenda. Awesome. Well, without further ado, then we'll get into the governance update, let you know what's going on in the land of votes. What's a pretty quiet week again. We just had one weekly poll that did pass, and that was MakerMan's retroactive delegate compensation. As far as ongoing polls, there is one green light poll going on for the Punk, that is an NTFX CryptoPunk collateral. The voting ends there on March 7th, so be sure to express your opinion if you feel so inclined to do so. And we do still have several of our ratification polls that are up for vote and we'll be going over in our MIPs. I'll do it for polls. It brings us to executive proposal. As a reminder, we haven't had one for a couple of weeks, but tomorrow we do plan to kick back into action. Will be fairly simple by most standards executive, just including that MakerMan retroactive delegate compensation I mentioned before, and an increase of the PSMG USDA debt ceiling. I believe that's going up to 60 million. Awesome. So that's what's happening in votes land. I'm going to pass it over to Pablo, I believe, for our MIPS update.
Hello, everyone. Next slide,
Loud
please.
And clear, Pablo. Yeah.
Nice. I'm on a different PC today. So it's the final stretch for the proposals that enter February's governance cycle, and ratification polls are closing in 4 days on Monday. We are going to take a very quick look at this now. Next slide, please. Thank you. So instead of having 5 or 6 slides for this, I've decided to use a single one this time. I hope it's all clear. So all proposals are currently passing, all but one anonymously too. If things keep looking like this, by Monday we'll be accepting MIP 60, the Intangible Asset Assignment MIP. We'll be onboarding Dennis as the new DAX facilitator with Philip stepping down voluntarily. We'll be adjusting the budgets for risk, collateral engineering services, and Immunifi security. We'll be amending MIP 55 for increased clarity. We'll be onboarding the TechOps Keeper network. And finally, we'll be welcoming the Maker Talent core units. Next slide, please. Now we're going to review the proposals whose status is RFC, that is request for comments. Thank you. We have a MIP 65, which establishes a framework to arrange, coordinate, and execute a liquid fund strategy to replace part of the current Maker USDC exposure. MIP 61, the delegate compensation is, as we all know, still being trialed and has seen a couple of changes more or less recently. So please go give it a new read if you haven't in the last couple of weeks. Next slide. As for core unit budgets, we have tight budgets for real world finance and GGO Alpha, and also for GGO Alpha and MKR compensation plan. Next slide, please. Yep. Deimos has posted the draft of an onboarding proposal set for removing the MakerDAO shop. Next slide. We have two amending proposals. MIP 4C2 SP15 amends the core unit framework defining MIPs 39, 40, and 41 to improve the current less than great core unit onboarding process. The pull request for this amendment will soon be incorporating all the feedback it has received so far, so please keep an eye on it. We also have MIP 4C2 SP17, which amends MIP 64. Which defines in turn the bug bounty program run by Immunifi Security to make small payments more agile. This entails a modification to Immunifi Security's previous budget. I don't know how relevant this is, but originally this one was a MIP 43, an amendment for proposals younger than 3 months, and these have a shorter than usual feedback period of 1 week. So we discussed this with Joshua and agreed that it would be better to have it stay in RFC for a bit longer and enter the monthly cycle instead as a MIP 4C2. So yeah, if you haven't checked it out yet, please do. We think it's important for this proposal to gain a bit more exposition. Next slide, please. Yep. Finally, we have a renewed mandate for the Governance Communications Core Unit, whose goal is to adjust the accuracy of the mandate and to provide enhanced accessibility to the core unit's documentation. We also have two proposals to further onboard two keeper networks and a declaration of intent to invest in short-term bonds as a solution to make our DAO having its balance sheet composed of around 60% stablecoins. Next slides. Yeah, and Gala and I have been reaching out to authors to remind them that the closing period for their eligible proposals starts on March 5th. The formal submission window for March opens on Monday 7th. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Pablo. And I did receive one of those reminder messages about MIPS and submissions, so we appreciate you for doing that. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to Pablo or any of us from the Gov Alpha Core Unit. We'd be more than happy to help you along. Awesome. That brings us to our forum updates. I believe we have Artem here to tell us what's going on.
Yes, welcome. I just posted the link to the forum at a glance. So welcome everyone. Forum at a glance, quick review. This one's covering February 17th to the 24th. I know we didn't have a GNR call last week, but the forum at a glance for the previous week for ETHDenver is up in case you want to check that out. And we'll begin with our top announcements for the week. So first up, LPro submits a pre-vote notice elaborating some discussion outcomes and concerns he has had with the Maker Talent Core Unit. He talks about potential improvements for core unit incubation and education of recruitees. 3F delegate believes that the SES core unit requires some additional resources and bandwidth to help improve their process for incubation and align some core unit communications. However, as there have been now some replies as of recent, and members from the Maker Talent team have responded to help clear any inquiries and misunderstandings about the Maker Talent strategy that were presented in the post. Next up, the Growth Core Unit had an offsite in Mexico from February 7th to 11th. Participants included the Growth team and members from core units such as protocol engineering, oracles, data insights, and they also had a delegate. They published in their post breaking down their complete agenda for the offsite and its positive outcomes, as well as some ideas that came out. So definitely check it out. Next up, we have Centrifuge, who shares their progress on the legal structure for their United States-based assets and introduced the New Jersey real-world asset structure, which is explained and forecasted to protect investors and issues from potential litigation claims. It can also help bring TradeFi players into the DeFi space, potentially expanding the types and quantity of real-world assets available to Maker. Check out the post to also view a work in progress schematic of the Jersey structure. And now we'll be moving to our top discussions. There were multiple discussions by both Long4Wisdom and The Existence that have pushed towards source credit improvements, analysis, and ultimately off-chain governance incentives and list of options and recommendations that were explained thoroughly. These discussions are all available at the forum at a glance, and they're also submitted in an organized order, which makes it a lot easier for everyone to read along the threads and follow up. And next up, Long for Wisdom submits the second part in market liquidity for Maker and DAI. This post covers the objectives in forming a liquidity strategy. Long discusses goals such as increasing adoption of DAI on L2 and other chains, improving DAI as a default routing token for on-chain liquidity, and dampening MKR liquidity. The post is pretty comprehensive, and it includes potential risk and benefits accompanying each objective provided, so definitely worth to check it out. And finally, we have Chris, who returns to support his defense on increasing the surplus buffer. He promotes the idea of a long-term pause on burning Maker and provides historical data showing that burn does not increase MKR price unless it is a very large burn. He believes that we should focus on aggressive growth, which can be easiest done by growing the surplus buffer, and that new revenue generated can then be reinvested to help improve the protocol and further promote DAI adoption. Moving on to our signal requests, we currently have 4 signal requests that are active. First up, GFX Labs introduces the idea of governance mining to help improve voting participation and asks the community whether we should implement the governing mining trial that's detailed in the post. Next up, the Ambassador program funding has been disrupted by the offboarding of the content production core unit. In response, CAT is pushing it as a pilot program without any core unit accompanying it, and is signaling to the community to help fund the program with a budget of 25,000 DAI. Next signal request, we have Psychonaut, who believes the simplest method for improving Maker liquidity is to add protocol-owned DAI MKR LP shares to the UniV2. He asks the community whether Maker should allocate 20 million to a protocol-owned UniV2 Maker DAI LP and presents his argument that the pros do outweigh the cons for this. And finally, to burn or not to burn, and I feel like at this point, this topic needs its own discussion panel. But in response, the executive temporarily disabling burn and surplus auctions since Flappy Friday. Shupi asks the community whether the protocol should return to the previous partial burning configuration as agreed in November of last year, but only if the rate limiter has been installed and an initial configuration for the rate limiter has been set. And that's it for the forum at a glance, at least the verbal section. There's a lot more announcements, discussions, and also help wanted, as well as ongoing initiatives in the written version. Also check out the PDF and leave some feedback.
Awesome, appreciate it, Artem. Yeah, great to see all those posts up there, and definitely a lot to chat about. So please do follow up on the forum in addition to what we discussed here. Awesome, so that should bring us to our initiative updates. I believe there's just one, and that's going to be on ETHDenver today.
Yeah, that's right. And actually, I do want to add some context. So we were aiming to do pretty much an initiative update once every month for each of like the active initiatives that we're able to track. And so I want to just put that in context that we're going to be doing it a little bit differently. Like some initiatives, even after a month, don't have like very reportable like progress. Like, you know, there is obviously progress, but there isn't like a several major points where it would be really worth it to bring it up in this call. So we're taking each initiative kind of in context, and we're going to be giving updates as needed. We are still going to be targeting at least once a month for them. But some of them might happen like once every 6 weeks, for example, or once every 5 weeks. So yeah, just wanted to mention that for the people in this call. And so, yeah, today we're going to be doing ETHDenver. Several teams participated in ETHDenver. And so I'm going to, several of us have also prepared like a slide each for us for each of our respective teams. And so I'm going to give it over to the very first one, which is Soren from the DeFi Foundation. And if Soren is not here, then I will happily cover it for him, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think Soren's here.
Needed someone to cover it.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, let me kind of bring us through his slide then. So the objectives for the DeFi Foundation core unit were to meet stakeholders and get better connected to the community, to discuss specific intangible asset topics with other core units and external stakeholders, as well as to get a better feel for coming developments in MakerDAO. Time will tell, but we believe the objectives were accomplished. Ping Soren and Peter for specifics. Also, feel free to ask in the DeFi Foundation public channel on our Discord. Going forward, the DeFi Foundation wants to continue to engage with the community in person to inform and get feedback. Still, I feel it's often overkill to have specific DeFi Foundation side event at conferences. Thus, I have discussed with Governance Communications CU, that's us, whether we can bring several core units together for an event at ETH Amsterdam for MakerDAO targeted for MakerDAO community members. And this is specifically for the DeFi Foundation and its board to be present, as well as targeting specifically mandated actors and recognized delegates. And actually, we've already been doing some temperature testing during ETHDenver to see if we can make it happen. And so that might be one of the next things on everybody's agenda. All right, that's it for the DeFi Foundation. I'm going to hand it off to whoever is representing Real World Finance Core Unit. I think it's Will Remore. And if not, I apologize. Okay, I think I might have to cover for Will as well.
Just read the whole deck, David.
Yeah, basically, right? All right, so for the Real World Finance Core Unit at ETHDenver, there were several people there, including Will, Christian Peterson, Umanes from the forum, and I think one or two others. So they met with many potential applicants with an interest for onboarding real-world assets into Maker Vaults. They explained their core unit's proposed structured finance methodology to potential applicants. It focuses heavily on the professionalization and kind of watertightness of these types of deals. It's also the first time the Real World Finance team met in person. And likewise, it's the first time several of the team members have got to meet delegates in person. So that was a short one. PE.
You don't want to do this one, David?
No, I think the people on the call like multiple voices, diversity.
Oh, all good. Okay, cool. So yeah, we had a whole bunch of meetings over the last week. So breaking it down to some high-level items, L2 to start off with. So the focus here was on architecture, implementation details, all around future-proofing our designs. Some of the areas we were talking about, Optimism, Arbitrum, Stark, where we're engaging with these. Currently, there's active development work going on here, but also Aztec and ZK Syncs are looking forward ahead as well and trying to, like I say, optimize, future-proof our integrations with them. Then onto integration. So these sets of meetings were all around building a scalable model to support integrations with other third parties, growing DAI supply, reducing USDC reliance. I know Sam on our team had some great meetings along with Chris, I believe, on the TrueFi side. So all about, I guess the way I like to frame it is think of it like wholesale, where you integrate with these third parties, they go on and do other deals, and in doing so, we're able to scale much more efficiently than if we were to be doing it independently. So some good opportunities here. So really looking forward to this, and I have Maple on there as well. So how do we integrate D3M with that sort of initiative? And then institutional vaults, I skipped that one, but we had a call earlier today actually, and that was a follow-on from a meeting we had with Growth and Oazo, Frank from Oasis.app there. Maker stakeholders, bit of a sort of summary here, just aligning on initiatives, prioritization discussions, making sure that we have good working relationships with our third-party contractors, I guess. So in this case, Chain Security, Satora, we had some tooling discussions with them. Also had a meeting with the delegates, which was lovely. And then familiar faces from the rest of the Maker community, which was great as always. And we also had a couple of days, we had an internal workshop with the team. So alignment on strategy, understanding our team approach, And it's interesting that the above three sections kind of fall neatly into these different verticals of cross-domain scaling. So L1, other L1s, L2 rollups, the ZK space, and sidechains as well, and then core protocol. So strategy and the work that we have going on around maintaining the protocol and new module developments, and then safety and security again there with the auditors, formal verification, and so on. So yeah, that sums it up from me. I'll keep it short, but happy to answer any questions that are coming up.
In the chat, Paper Imperium was asking a bit about what the conversation was with TrueFi.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I think, like Sam is saying, yeah, they support under collateralized loans similar to Maple, and I guess starting off that conversation, just trying to see what the opportunity may be in terms of scaling, so that they offer multiple different loan types, and if we can onboard them in a similar way to the discussions around Maple, then it gives us a scalable solution. But yeah, I know Nadia.
Yeah, if I may add one thing, it's important to realize that they also have exposure to real world assets. Like in Maple, I think it's mostly like, the boring parts are like crypto speculators. With TrueFi, there are also, real world use cases, like for example in Mexico, that they are like lending out, providing like credit lines for the real businesses operating in Mexico via TrueFi. So I think this is a cool way to get exposure to real world assets again.
Yeah, if I can add, because we had a call with Maple later this week, or even today, I remember. The business model is very different. So it's all beautiful, but then we need to see whether there is, again, the right structure and the right risk return profile. But we are working with them because I think there is really the potential to leverage their platform without us reinventing the wheel on the structure inside, if they're doing the things in an appropriate way, a bit like Centrifuge.
Yes, and by the way, with this, uncollateralized lending, there's much more possibility of a default, right? So this is why we should have like reasonable surplus buffer again.
It depends. It depends how you structure. Again, I think if we want to go into the detail, Maple, for example, is uncollateralized on chain, but the junior pool delegates that actually ask for security off chain through contracts with the borrowers, we could ask them to absorb most of the first losses and be senior to them, and so be less risky. I personally, as an individual, would never advise the protocol to just do a D3M with uncollateralized stuff that is underwritten by a single team from the other side of the world that is yielding 25%, because I think it's throwing money out of the window. But this is my view.
Yeah, but it was good to kick off those discussions and bring people together to have them face to face, so that we can now bring it to the forum and continue it on. So yeah, all in all, it was really good.
All right, sweet. Thank you all for chiming in. GGO Alpha, pros.
Hey, how's it going? So this was the first conference for GGO Alpha due to, I guess, pandemic situation, plus not getting a passport in time for Lisbon. So I was mostly there to kind of explore and see what was going on, and found the whole situation very valuable. Thanks to Lenka, I was able to get up on a stage for a future-proofing governance panel. That seemed to go well, and a lot of feedback from that was that we need to be discussing governance things more in the space. And kind of like a good signal of that was there weren't a lot of other senior protocols talking about governance issues. So like a lot of what gets discussed is based on a lot less experience, right? Yeah, so that was really valuable. Met with a ton of core units, VCs, other delegates, spent a lot of time chatting with our delegates, learning about our system. Huge shout out to Dux for letting me crash their Airbnb one night and spending a ton of time talking to me about L2 and gasless voting. Yeah, it was just a very good experience to meet everyone in person and felt very valuable from the governance end, just based on networking, if nothing else. So yeah, that's good enough.
All right, Monkey Irish, you're up.
All right. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. Hey, we were hoping to have an offsite for CES, but unfortunately, the timing with all the craziness in the world and some passport issues didn't enable us to do that. But Kaveh was able to make it, and I was also able to make it. The slide's a little cut off there, but and for us, the two main areas, there was the education and goodwill, and then the maker relationship building. And so on the first part of it is that it really gives us an opportunity to learn about new projects and networking, and at the same time focus on community building and education, which is so critically important as we're sort of in this in-between time with not having a marketing presence or a formal marketing presence inside of MakerDAO. The other piece of it, which is so invaluable, after 2 years of screen time with coworkers, ETHDenver really brought home to me how important IRL is to getting stuff done, and just really building tighter relationships with everybody. So when we leave ETHDenver, we have that to build upon and getting our work done when we collaborate or ask questions. So it's so critically important, and I just want to call that out. And I think there's a little bit of a theme of that going on here. We also did get a chance to take a little bit of a break and go up to Breckenridge and have a little bit of a hack house going on. And that one picture in the middle is the example of blockchain, the example of blockchain and snowboarding. But we did make it out onto the slopes, and it was great to have an opportunity to be able to spend some time and relax as well. So thank you to Kaveh for providing the text on the slide. And if you have any questions, let me know. Oh, one other thing I do want to mention, in light of recent events, we do have one member of our team that lives in Lviv in Western Ukraine, and that's on the border of Poland. So I would just ask, whatever your belief system might be or not, just to hold Nazar in your thoughts, your prayers, whatever you do. It's a really challenging time for him with his family, and he has a young baby, and he's actually heading back to his hometown after being on vacation. So while he was on vacation, this conflict started. So I just really appreciate a lot of consideration for him in these trying times.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Robert. All right, just a short one from myself and my team. So we had a successful team offsite. Our goal was really for the three of us to meet together, and myself, Artem, and Thomas got to do that. We had breakfasts pretty much every morning. We were only there for a handful of days. We all kind of departed on the Sunday, but we talked a lot about kind of strategy. Sorry. Okay, yeah, so we talked a lot about the strategy for GovComs for the next few quarters. We talked about what kind of resources that our team may need to further kind of improve our offerings, further professionalize what we do, and really to kind of bring on somebody from the public relations side that could really help MakerDAO. And a part of that was, of course, attending several meetings. We did so together. We went to Maker events. We also independently met with various stakeholders in the organization. We had many conversations about coordination and comms. One of my missions during this trip was to gather feedback and kind of like the temperature in the room around GovComs moving to expand and make a proposal to hire a public relations professional. And so I got a lot of positive feedback there, basically for that move. And so it's going to be a part of our budget proposal that's going to be up in about a week. And so, yeah, we had a very, very productive ETHDenver. And I want to echo what Robert is saying, like meeting people in real life it's kind of crazy. Like you think Zoom is good, but then you like spend that same hour like in person with a handful of people, and there's just so much more. Like you get such richer conversation, and you get a lot, and also it gives you a chance to bond with the people in the organization and really to find that cohesion and to find that to reaffirm that knowledge that we're all on a team together, despite the fact that we're a bunch of independent core units. And so, yeah, Another interesting thing is that I do like hugs, Chris. That's very true. Another interesting thing, unfortunately, Chris wasn't there, so I couldn't give you a hug, man. But another interesting thing was the fact that, as the DeFi Foundation mentioned, they helped us surface a need for a maker delegate recognized, maker delegate, mandated actor. That should be an MA, not an MD. Mandated actor, recognized delegate, and DeFi Foundation offsite in EU around Amsterdam. So yeah, we're working on trying to get that organized. So yeah, thank you. That's it for me.
Oh, I wanted to mention something really quick.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Yeah, so this is for anyone who's interested. I spoke to a lot of people at ETHDenver, and well, one thing led to another, and I actually have a group of people who are very interested in developing a Markham's core unit. They're ready to like submit their CVs, a draft proposal, ready to get on calls. And so whoever's interested, like I want to send them their way, just let me know.
I assume based on my conversations with Nadia, she would be very interested. So send them Growth's way.
Okay, perfect.
And she can confirm because she's actually talking on the next slide, which is Growth.
Hey everyone. Well, it was an incredible time for us. Like conferences are always a lot for all of us because we try to spend time with the maker family, but also we have to talk and discuss different ideas with our partners and potential partners. So we have a lot of things that we discussed during ETHDenver that I can't talk about it because like until you will know when it's done. But like we have been thinking a lot about the multi-chain strategy, and that's now like one of our main objectives for Maker and for how Maker growth can help Maker on that. So everything we are doing is like with that objective in mind. We also had a lot of conversations with people from Web2 in the ETHDenver event, which is great. I think it's the first time I see so many new faces. It was like packed, new people, everyone interested to learn more about Maker. And like this is also interesting, like people who attended to the real world finance side event, they were super interested about how to interact in Maker in that sense, how they can like integrate with us and get a loan from Maker, but also people interested in working with us, which was great. Like after I participated as a speaker in ETHDenver, I talk about Maker growth and how we want to incubate the marketing core unit, and I got like a lot of people wanting to collaborate on this one. Also there was like this girl from TikTok asking me if we were interested in doing something with them. So we also had that dinner hosted by Google because they are super interested in learning more about Web3 and what we are doing. So it was great. One thing that I noticed, and it's something that we will work on that in the future in the next events, is that new people, they don't know that DAI is part of Maker. So I know like we don't have a marketing team and all of that, but we have to work on that message because they think Maker and DAI are like separate things. We also had different internal meetings, like the most interesting ones were with Oasis and protocol engineering to talk about institutional vaults, because with Oasis we are planning to have the front end for that new service that we will offer. And also thank you, David, for helping me organizing the dinner with other mandated actors and delegates. I think that was awesome. It was the first time we did something like that, and yeah, like we could discuss a lot of the different strategies that we have in the forum, like Maker burn, surplus buffer, multi-chain strategy, how to scale Maker. I don't know. We talk about different things. It was great, and definitely we need more of these conversations. And well, also with other core units, we collaborated on creating the maker party, Divinity, which was awesome. I don't know if you guys saw the videos on Twitter, but we had like this church full of the maker brand, DAI logo everywhere. So it was amazing. It was a great party. Thank you so much for everyone involved there, like protocol engineering, oracles, the Oasis team. Part of my team was also collaborating then. There, like we had like this amazing team who really knows how to organize parties. So that was great, and we want to do this kind of events in the future. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah. Also to tack on a huge amount of like gratitude for strategic happiness. I think despite the fact that we didn't have a formal sponsorship at ETHDenver, the incredible amount of hats, like MakerDAO hats, that Bourbon organized and ordered in partnership with Kat was absolutely mind-blowing. Like, you know, there were 4 times more people at ETHDenver than the last one I was at, and Maker had such a huge presence because 1 in every 4 people was wearing one of our hats. And so, yeah, really solid move on some marketing there.
You're right, David. I forgot about that, but I'm receiving messages of people on LinkedIn or Twitter telling me they have a DAI beanie. So yeah, thank you, Strategic Happiness, for that.
Yeah, this is incredible. All right, that concludes the initiative update for ETHDenver.
Awesome. Great to hear from so many of the core units that were out there.
Awesome. I guess I'll launch us into the discussion segment.
Take it away.
Okay, cool. Yeah, welcome to the discussion segment. We have one of these every call. So today we're going to be taking on a topic that was recommended by Justin Case, one of the recognized delegates here at MakerDAO. And the question is the DAO equipped to work with service provider core units? And so the idea is that, you know, lacking a formal power structure, a centralized power structure, no core unit is able to impose their standards on others. Are we ready to deal with these kinds of CUs, use them and listen to their advice? You know, how should core units interact with each other to gain trust and provide value? You know, can core units serve other protocols? And basically, how do we work together to kind of have buy-in around the various types of work that we do? And just for everybody here, here's a list of the 21 core units, one of which is an RFC, Maker Talent. And these are, you know, very much like independent teams that each do their own scope of work. And so, you know, Risk Team, for example, produces assessments on various levels. GGO Alpha, you know, makes recommendations on governance stuff and moderates and mediates the governance side of Maker. GovComms does a lot of the communication side of things. We make recommendations, right? We don't make like commands on how we should do things as a DAO. So a part of this question for us is also very relevant. We are a service provider core unit. SES is also a service provider core unit to an extent. And so, yeah, like several of the core units here on this list are very much in this category of a service provider core unit. And so, yeah, I want to open it up. If you'd like to kind of further elaborate on the topic, Justin, that would be really cool. But otherwise, yeah, like open floor. I'd love to hear kind of what other core units have done to produce buy-in around their initiatives and kind of recommendations.
Yeah, take it away, Justin.
All right. Thank you for the introduction. The reason I brought this up is that we are recently about to onboard a few core units that are, I think, more explicit in their support function than some of these others that you mentioned. I think maybe sort of test this. If you remove the other core units, does this core unit still make any sense? And the less sense it makes without the other core units, the more of a support core unit it is, as far as I can tell. And the reason I'm saying this is because some core units might get this role where they kind of should try to make standards for other core units. And the only way to be successful in that endeavor, in my mind, is if you have earned the respect of the DAO as a whole. Because we don't have a formal power structure, so you basically need to be recognized as bringing something to the table and bringing value to the table. And in that respect, I also think onboarding these kinds of core units takes a little bit more effort from the community at large. I think we need to, in a larger sense, show the need for them, because if the community does not support them, they will fail. I don't believe in onboarding core units that is set up to fail, which is the reason why I wanted to bring this topic to a more wider discussion. So yeah, that's my lead in, I guess.
Awesome, great way to set it up, Justin. This would probably makes most sense to pause there and see if there's any questions about the topic or the scope before we get too deep into it. So far, it doesn't seem like it. All right. Well, in that case, the floor is open. Like I said, if you got something to say, feel free to hop on the mic. If there is a queue, you can raise your hand and we're happy to call on you. Or if you are unwilling or otherwise unable to speak up on mic, feel free to drop your comments in the chat and then we will broadcast them for you.
I think like a big key to being able to work cohesively together as a DAO, as independent core units, is really like communications. One thing I've observed in kind of like cross core unit initiatives that have to happen is, you know, whoever is leading them, like a lot of times they're, not that there's not a lot of consideration, it's kind of like there's like an important work item and it kind of gets put on the table with not really too much regard for like other teams' bandwidth. And I think because there's so much stuff happening, oftentimes there's like, you know, things are slow to get moving because everybody has to take time to kind of digest what's being proposed, come up with like a sort of sensible position and a thoughtful position before engaging. And a lot of times it just takes time. So yeah, I think like communication and lead time and really like core units who want to put forward standards have to make a very, very, very good case for the standard and also have to do a lot of like priming work before making it public. Yeah, just some thoughts. I see a couple people with raised hands.
No, it's all. You go for it, Robert.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that to comment is that decentralization doesn't eliminate the need for certain functions. So if we take a look at a centralized organization, right, there are certain people or groups that are needed for the success of any organization, however they are organized. And so, you know, when I take a look at that, you have what I'll just call core units, and then you have the supporting core units. We need those supporting core units. And, you know, I'll just, you know, the easiest example, because I know it's most visible right now, is from a people perspective, right? People and talent is our most important asset we have as a DAO. That function somehow needs to exist. Each of you can decide whether or not the current core unit that's being proposed is the one to do this, but we need that function, right? So there's a necessity, and decentralization doesn't eliminate that. So I just want to make that comment, and maybe it's very clear to people or maybe it's not, but I do support having these supportive organizations. And I don't feel as if in a lot of situations anybody is forcing me. I have a choice as a facilitator to use or not to use those services. And my stance is always, let me partner where I can, and where I can't, then I'm going to have to do it on my own. And I prefer to partner and collaborate versus doing it on my own. So just a quick comment.
I like what Robert just said about that, you know, a lot of these services are necessary. And so it does make a lot of sense, right? You know, to have a core unit focus on them, to solve the problem once, rather than having each core unit kind of just spend a bunch of resources on their own solving the same problem. That being said, I do also want to reinforce his other comment, right, that core units shouldn't be forced to use a certain solution. If a solution is good, it will prove itself over time to be good, right? And you will naturally gravitate towards using that solution. So for example, one example I like to bring up is Accountable. Accountable is not, I don't think it's like a core unit within Maker, but it's a service that many of the Maker core units use because it's very useful, right? And core units aren't forced to use Accountable, but in the end, many of them do because it's such a good service.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Nick. I'm going to kick it to Mariano. I saw throw his hand up.
Thank you. I tend first to listen what the community says about this. Clearly, this Maker Talent brought a lot of discussions around if we were relevant or not, or if we were correctly, the setup was correct or not. I think that the first thing we need to take into account is that we are learning how to create supporting functions core unit. And what I noticed being a new member of MakerDAO is that we're too afraid of losing our independence, our capacity of working autonomously in the core units. And this sometimes leads us to think that any supporting function will take out this ability of working, instead of seeing it as a partner, seeing the supporting functions as someone that will just help me perform, help me doing better, help me taking out from my desk things that are using a lot of my time. Probably, I think this is the first conversation we need to have before seeing if a core unit is prepared or not for success, because all the core units, or most of them, of the ones we have so far, were focused on products. So it was easy to quantify, to give metrics about how well they're doing, what's the business plan, how much we're going to sell. But in this case, what we're talking about is people. And when I started, I realized that no one is able to use metrics and real metrics to forecast what we need, the workforce that we will need in the future. So I think, I'm not gonna stand here, watching, because I really know that this topic comes because of Maker Talent, and it's relevant, and this is the place to discuss this. And I think this is healthy, and it's necessary to have these discussions. So, but I think we also need a change of mindset here. It's not about thinking supporting functions core units as something that will force me to do things or will issue policies. This is not the approach that we want to have. We're prepared for winning because we want to see MakerDAOs growing, right? And growing and performing. And my best example is governance. At the very beginning, governance is being responsible, is doing loads of things professionally, is gaining respect from what they do. And nobody thinks that governance is taking out authority or the ability to do what facilitators want. So I think that this is the best approach possible. We're not going to come and impose policies or force anyone to do anything. The best way is let anyone that wants it use Maker Talent to perform and do and grow, and we'll come with a bunch of best practices, good examples, and success stories. And it will be optional. This is the main thing. No, we're not planning to force anyone to use it, and we're not planning to be the typical HR department issuing policies that everybody will need to follow. This is not what a DAO is meant to be, and this is not the right approach either.
Thanks for that perspective, Mariano.
I see, Justin, you have your hand up. You want to jump back in?
Yeah, thanks again, David. I'm sorry for not having my beautiful face for your pleasure this evening, but such is life. I kind of want to echo some of the sentiments that's already provided here. I think it's very important to retain different core units' autonomy, and as such, I envision these kind of services to be in a advisory service provider kind of role. So basically, different core units can choose whether they want to use them or not. At the same time, I think it's important that we have a realistic expectation that they will be chosen to be used, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense to onboard them, because it takes quite a bit of time and resources to do the onboarding process. We create some expectations in whatever unit we're onboarding, and it's really bad for everyone involved if we have to offboard a certain core unit after, say, 6 months, because the larger community decided that they didn't want to use this service. So while I believe in the voluntary bit of this, I think we should have some sort of temperature measurement in the community, whether this is something they believe in or not, and whether something they are willing to try or not. Not that we want to force this on anyone, more ask the question openly before we actually approve, do the final steps of approval of such a core unit. Because along as others have said here, I think MakerDAO is getting to the point where we're large enough that that we actually need specialized knowledge in other fields rather than just our core operating fields. Like we need someone who is an expert at talent. We need someone who's expert at marketing. We maybe need someone who's expert at accounting, legal, all these other kinds of classical support functions you find in a larger corporation. So, but for them to actually thrive in a decentralized environment, we need to have a certain expectation that the larger community will actually use them.
There's a discussion going on the chat about, like if it's optional, it shouldn't be, there shouldn't be a core unit. What I say is what I mean with optional is like we're not gonna force you to use a core unit if you don't want to, because basically this is one of the things on the job. We don't have a central authority that can force you to do things. But like what we're trying to do is to align ourselves and try to do everything on the same direction to improve scalability and provide MakerDAO with a framework. So what we're trying to do when we say, are we providing a compensation frame for facilitators to use? Of course, if you want to use something different, well, you always have the possibility to pay your own vendors. This is why you're a core unit. And if you want to use different services, then go ahead and do it. That's not a problem. But like what we're trying to be is we're trying and we want to be relevant for all the DAO. And we want to provide a compensation framework, market insights, a job evaluation system, an induction system for everyone. So we are not prepared for the outsiders that they don't want to use it. We want to, like be relevant for the ones that they want to be aligned and they want to see MakerDAO growing. Of course, there will be always someone that says, okay, I don't want to use your system. Well, this is one of the things that we'll probably need to talk to about how the DAO is going to be managed in the future. What happens if we have a core unit that doesn't want to follow, is not aligned with us? Well, we need to have processes for that. But let's set up a difference between being optional and letting other core units not be aligned. We are spending money on this. We are spending resources on being more success and having people practices, or like in terms of marketing, we're probably going to have aligned practices in terms of marketing. Will that mean that one core unit in the future cannot use their own marketing resources? Well, this is one of the conversations we probably need to have in the future about how we're going to have these things. But this doesn't mean that optional means that is irrelevant. That's it. Thank you.
See Layer has his hand up.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what I wanted to add is that I think I agree. we need definitely support core units, and I am thinking particular in the legal core units. I think in SES, we think that MakerDAO needs a bunch of legal core units, and SES plans to incubate a series of legal core units, but we'd have to be very careful scoping the mandate of this core unit. And I agree with what has been said until now. It is important that these new legal core units or this support core unit do not have a decision authority over other core units. It is very important. So we need legal support, but we don't need the type of legal support that a centralized company has or that a traditional legal counsel has in a traditional centralized organization. Then, I think for me, the most relevant point is that at the end, each core unit should be responsible for its own decisions, should be accountable for its own decisions. And if we have supportive legal core units, this should be only like on demand. And it is very important that we don't create with the supportive core units like hierarchies or centralization points or some type of control elements. So I think that is important. That should be like a principle that should guide the new core units, but that we need them definitely.
Thanks, Lazier.
I want to add something to that actually. I think that this is a feature of a DAO actually. When you're in a normal company, usually it's, I don't know, the boss of your boss said, okay, now you guys need to fill in this form because we're trying this new optimization tool. And it might suck, right? Like your whole department might be stuck with it just because someone in another department or some expensive consultant said that this is a great idea and they're going to solve world hunger with this. When you are a core unit, you are only, I think Brian said in the chat, you're only accountable to the MKR holders. And if you decide to serve other core units, you need to think about them as users. And Nick made this point super clear. And you need to make sure that they are going to use your services because you made not only sure that you're adding value to them, but also that you're making it so easy that they almost don't need to do much, right? So you need to provide a lot of value and ideally at very little cost, which could be time, it could be another Excel sheet that they need to form. So I think that this is a huge feature of the DAO, and this design of having core units that need to provide value to the DAO in general is quite powerful. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Thanks, Juan. So I know one question that surfaced at like some of the ETHDenver discussions was for these kind of service core units, what happens if their service isn't needed for a period of time, right? Like a lot of these core units are structured in a way that, you know, they have mandate, they have things to be doing at all times. However, if you base your kind of deliverables off of what other core units need, there is a chance that those other core units won't have the need for a period of time. Curious if anyone had thoughts on that matter.
There are many scenarios where you can, like not be relevant, or for example, you can no longer, your core unit can no longer be relevant for the business because they can be, like outdated when it comes in terms of technology. So this is something that could happen to many core units. I can talk in terms of talent, like I've been in HR departments where we have been downsizing and where we have been doing loads of things not necessarily connected to hiring. So this is one of the biggest challenges that we have in talent, that we believe that if we don't hire, then HR or talent is useless and we don't have anything to do. And this is this is the first thing that we need to try to remove from our current mindset and try to like think differently when it comes to this. I think that talent is absolutely relevant, even more relevant in the worst times, because when things are not going on going well and you're not hiring, you're not scaling, this is when you really need to think about what's failing on your structure. People usually start leaving when you're failing to scale up, or when you're failing with your own business. And this is when talent is relevant again, to identify what's going on and why people are leaving, why the current structure is not functioning, and why we fail in our people practices. We, at the end of the day, we are people working. So this is what we need to take into account. The business model can fail, but at the end of the day, if someone decides to leave Maker, or we are failing in providing a good structure that responds to the market, then we're relevant again. So let's just, and this is something that comes from usually in the finance world. We believe that hiring is as simple as going to the newspaper, posting an ad, and wait for people to apply. And what we're bringing here is much more than this.
Marian, and do we have that problem now? I don't know if other core units have been like having this problem of like people quitting their jobs and trying to identify what's happening there.
The good thing about Maker is that we're doing very well. So it's hard to, you know, like we, as the X-Ray project said, we are not having problems of people leaving because we are not a good place to work in. The problem that I see is the way we are scaling up, the resources that we are using to find contributors. I realize that most facilitators are using their inner circle to find people. There's a huge pool of talent out there that we are definitely not using, and we are using ad hoc solutions for things that, if we have a good framework, we could scale up faster, and we could, you know, like have better resources to do things. I have not identified many people leaving the level that the churn on the turnover is perfectly acceptable for what we have. We are growing a lot. We have 14 positions. We're looking for people, and other other core units are incorporating. We incorporated 4 people within the last month. So we are growing as a core unit. The problem is, how are we growing? What is the structure that we're using? What are the resources that we're using? How much time facilitators are using from the time that they have to perform it within their core units to do jobs and tasks that are not belonging to their core business, right? And this is when it comes to debate about, you know, like core units being relevant or not relevant. Do we need them? Is it relevant to have a core unit that is, you know, like freeing up my time to, you know, like do what I really want to do and scaling up my own core unit? And this goes back also to the offboarding process. If we have an effective offboarding process of core units, and we are relevant and we are fast when offboarding core units are no longer relevant for MakerDAO, then, you know, like we are being leaner, and we are being able to success and not spend money and use the money for other core units. So this is what I believe we are relevant, you know. So the offboarding processes are there, we will improve them, but this is when the supporting functions are there. And I think that we need a change of mindset here, because all the core units that we've got so far are connected to product. So this is, you know, like this is the moment where we need to learn if these supporting functions are something that we need, how we need them, are we willing to use them or not. So I think we're in a perfect moment to talk about this.
Thanks, Marianne.
I'd like to ask something to facilitators in the room, because, you know, one of the challenges that we're facing after we saw Frank's post is that adoption is one of the biggest concerns, right? So we don't know if core units are really going to use this. So I'd like to know, what do you feel about your you know, if you feel that your level of autonomy or the things that you do on your day-to-day are probably going to be better if you have these supporting functions? Or what are your concerns regarding this? Because this is the place to have this, you know, like this open debate. Are we really thinking that supporting functions are going to make us less autonomous, or do you think that we can benefit from them? And this is the main question, and this is the place to address those concerns.
In my opinion, I think teams at MakerDAO can greatly benefit from supporting function core units. You know, if I didn't have to retain a talent pool and do like the first, you know, 2 of the 3 interviews that I need to do, if I had help, you know, yeah, even creating the job descriptions from a talent core unit, that already offloads a lot of my, you know, personal bandwidth and resources, you know. So I think there is like a gain from having specialization in the DAO, whether it's talent, or whether it's strategic finance, or whether it's you know, SES. But you know, I think it's a matter of, you know, it is scaling, right? Because if you could have a support function that serves 20 different teams and provides value to 20 different teams, you know, it's just more efficient than all the teams doing it themselves. So I think the main challenge though is buy-in, and it's you know, it's also kind of like the risk of onboarding a core unit that might not be very good at being there, you know, being a supportive function. Like an example of that was, you know, content production. They did present themselves as a supporting core unit, but you know, they didn't deliver in a lot of ways, as people have come to agree upon. And so yeah, it really is a challenge of, you know, really clearly defining the scope up front, and then being excellent at delivery. You know, see Robert has his hand up.
Yeah, Mariano, thanks for the prompt. This is what's challenging for me, and I had some great conversations at ETHDenver with some of the delegates about it, is that our core units really require a great deal of leadership and experience as managers. And I don't know, because I haven't had the opportunity to talk with all the facilitators, the people involved, but my gut tells me that we don't have a strong depth of experience with people that have been hiring and managing teams and building and leading companies, right? And you know, I come from a background of startups and also very big companies, and I've held a lot of different roles. So for me, what I see is that I have a people development function inside of my core unit, and it's extremely important for my future. And so what I need to do is that figure out right now, I'm not, you know, I have a few people, but I don't have a huge organization. And so what I'm looking for is, at the moment, some part-time help to be able to not only, you know, let's work together. I want to assess my team. I want to provide tools. I love the post. I don't know her name, but the V18N Asia, talking about employees in a development perspective from the contributor viewpoint, which is so critical, right? And the path that they may or may not follow. And so it's on my mind every single day when I think about hiring and help hiring, because people are hiring people from all over the world, and retaining talent. It's so critical for me. So I get it, because I've been there many times before. Others may or may not have, and may or may not see the importance of it until something happens within their core unit and goes, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I really need some assistance when it comes to certain people issues. So I just want to throw that out there as just a lens of perception, at least from me. And so, yes, I intend to use, you know, I'll turn to Mariano and say, okay, what tools, what systems, what processes are you putting in place? How can I plug into that? I want to make sure my contributors on my team have that as a resource available to them, because I want to retain people. It's that simple. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, filling gaps for experience is very relevant to me too. Being a young, not as experienced as you, Robert, people manager. Yeah, it's definitely helpful when I have other people and the DAO to call upon for help. So yeah, Mark, go for it.
Yeah, I'll just briefly comment. So I think it relates to my core unit and my hiring experience past few weeks, hiring for the new strategic finance team. But you know, by and large, as a support type of function, I feel like there's a higher requirement to be deeply involved in the community and build trust and relationships with people kind of from scratch. My personal experience, I came on board the DAO just as an investor last like April, just started pitching out part-time and just slowly like ramping up and building trust over time. I think that's tough for other core units that don't kind of like organically do it that way. And, from like a talent perspective, my like personal thought was like, do I like trust this person to hire for my team? Like, I don't know anything about them. I haven't had any conversations with them. And my ultimate decision was no, frankly. So, what I thought to do for myself, my core unit, was use Bankless, which I think some others are starting to use as like a hiring board for crypto, because that kind of filters out people that aren't natively interested in crypto. And my experience, making my own job descriptions, interviewing people, doing screening and stuff, is that it's been extremely beneficial to understand the candidates out there, and also help me also better understand what like we want for our team. So, for basically $750 per candidate, I'll probably have 2 full-time people hired in a few days. So for me, that's a very inexpensive way, both cost for putting the profiles up there, and also Sebastian and I and Tej from World Finance just meeting and interviewing candidates that like I don't see a need to like change my process for now regarding talent.
What I want to say is that regarding what you just said, David, regarding job descriptions and hiring, but there are other things that are also important in terms of retaining people. That are so, for example, does any one of you as facilitators have set up for the members of your team a career plan? Do they know what they will be doing in 6, 12, and 18 months? Are we able to offer something for them to retain themselves, or are we having eventually like feedback meetings to know what our developers, what are the technologies that our developers wants to work with? These are questions that they talk a lot about, like not the admin side of recruitment, but also, like the retention side, the career plans. And what we got from X-Ray is usually that people are not living for money, or they are not, the reason why they're living is because they don't have a career plan, or because they want to work in their own projects. So these are things that we need to pay attention to, because probably in some core units, we are not living in space for these things to happen. And I agree that it's useful to, like get the market pulse when it comes what Mark Phillips was saying. It's interesting, but when you're a core unit that has 10 positions, and you need to see candidates, and you really want to see for each position 6 or 7 relevant candidates, because there are many reasons why a candidate cannot be a match, because he doesn't have full-time availability, because of the salary conditions, because his knowledge. So having someone that filters those candidates and gives you only the 10 that they think you want to meet is super important. It's super important, and that this doesn't mean that you're going to lose market pulse. This doesn't mean that you're not going to learn from outside. And having a talent department is not always delegating and forgetting about, like they're going to choose my candidates, going to choose the people that I will have to work with. It's more like a partnership. So we meeting together. What are the things you need? Where are we going to find them? Like, let's see among these people, who are the best ones you want to phone screen, and then gradually, like going all through the process together. So it's a team thing. It's not just like let them do my job. Let them choose the people that I have to work with. So this is the change of mindset that we also need to go through.
So I want to bring the topic back to just this general kind of services core unit thing, and less, people poking at kind of talking exclusively in this kind of a column of talent. And I don't want to say, this is my opinion, this is what we should do. I just kind of want to describe that what we're really talking about here is a symptom of kind of like a much bigger thing that comes up quite a lot. And it's really just this corporation versus a DAO, right? And the reasons you become a DAO instead of a corporation is, yes, it's much more inefficient, but it's more resilient, right? DAOs are optimizing for resiliency, not for efficiency. But you do have this kind of push-pull relationship, in a DAO where you are trying to negate those efficiency losses by constantly trying to kind of win back like those efficiency gains. And those tend to happen around some kind of centralization, right? And so we can say that, oh, well, if all of these core units have this problem, let's have a core unit that provides the service that solves this problem for everyone. And you've gained efficiency, but what you've also done is you've lost resiliency, because now you have this central point of failure where, okay, if that, let's use, I think Paper Imperium mentioned in the chat, right? We should have a banking core unit because it's really hard for core units to get banking. Well, imagine if the banking core unit gets picked off and all of a sudden every core unit loses banking at the same time, right? And so I wouldn't say that there's a right or a wrong answer here where you always say yes to service core units or you always say no, but I would like us to keep in mind kind of, what is the service that they're providing and how big of an impact would it have on the protocol or on the DAO, right? If that particular core unit, was targeted, how debilitating is that? And I think you'll find that in certain cases, right, we can live with those consequences, and it would make sense to have a kind of service core unit that provides that service. And in other cases, the threat that poses may not warrant kind of the efficiency gain.
Thanks for that reflection, Nick. It's to kind of build on that from the facilitator perspective. You do have this kind of interesting dynamic at play, right? Where you're responsible for the core unit. It's kind of your autonomous little organization within itself. And if it's not performing, you can be offboarded. You can face other consequences, right? So even if you're willing to lean on a service unit, it's kind of with the understanding that what they're providing for you still has to be done in the event that they're unable to do it. So in many ways, it becomes a harder sell for facilitators. But has that added benefit of delegation, right? Of saying, hey, this is something multiple of us really need, and if I can use less brain power, less labor on it, then that's kind of a win for the DAO.
There's an interesting conversation going on in the chat about how to retain people and what are the things that you have to do on your day-to-day basis to retain them. And of course, this is not black and white. This is not that like we have a supporting fund, we have a talent core unit, therefore I don't need to, like ask any more questions about, like they're going to take care of retention. They're going to take, no, it doesn't work like that. These are supporting functions mean that they're going to help you and they're going to provide tools that you don't know because you're not in the HR field all day, like looking for new apps, tools, and things that will help you perform, because this is not your core business. So the idea is to bring value. It's not, as you were saying before, it's not complete delegation or I do it everything myself. So there's something in the middle, and the level of contribution that we can do for every core unit is different. All the positions that we closed since we started, they were different. Some of them, they wanted us to do the full interview, some of them don't, some of them want to support stats. So this is the great thing about the DAO, that everybody can choose, the level of contribution from the supporting core unit that they actually want.
Awesome. So do you want to be
SES is paying for the incubation program as SES pays for every core unit while they are being incubated.
And thanks for answering that. There's a question in the chat about how the Maker Talent team is currently being funded. Awesome. Want to be mindful of time here as we are kind of winding down on what we usually allocate. If you have any last points, now would be a good time to bring them up.
I'm curious to hear some response to what Paper Imperium is bringing up in the chat. Mainly, like, okay, like support CUs, yes, you know, like they could break away and you're still responsible. So like there's some resiliency there. But aren't there kind of irreplaceable core units like oracles, like actually like the engineering teams, where it is kind of like almost a very huge risk if they fail or are underperforming or, you know, etc. And yeah, and I phrased it like in my own words, but feel free, Paper Imperium, to kind of expand on that question and for anybody to answer.
Really, there wouldn't be, right, David? So it's we try to make every single point of failure disappear, and that's how you fully decentralize. So that's yeah, well, that's a bit the objective. Just a shameless plug. Tomorrow there's a call in the status update for SES at 3:30 UTC about 3 new tracks that we're going to be releasing. One of them, maybe Artem, is useful for your friends. That includes outreach, so that would be everything that has to do with comms, marketing. The other one has more to do with transparency, reporting. We're working closely with strategic finance to make that better. And the last one is anything that has to do with legal risks on a different bunch of ways. So how do we deal with those risks, and how do we make sure that Maker is even more decentralized and we avoid having these points of failure?
Yeah, and like so as for like core unit offboarding, especially if there's a lot of dependency, I think that's why it's really important for us to incentivize graceful offboarding, whether that's through MKR compensation packages that vest, you know, that will continue to vest if you like, you know, gracefully deploy, gracefully wind down your core unit. Like that's actually something that I saw in the GGO Alpha MKR budget proposal. Like I think we should be there are other mechanisms to pretty much try to minimize that kind of those centralized points of failure for like major core units. But yeah. Yeah, and also actually to Long's point in the chat, so Long is saying if Gov Alpha drops off the map, the processes are written down in the MIPs. Anyone can operate the governance processes well enough to recover. This is actually something similar that we're trying to do with GovComs. Like we make all of our documentation public. We want pretty much like if we're voted out, you know, we don't want the function to kind of disappear. We hope that somebody can either take what we have and make it better. But at a minimum, we want to have like, we don't want to have a silo of the information or our processes or anything like that. We want to make it so that we're replaceable, which is obviously like not great for the security of our team in terms of like our individual positions here. But I think it's very important for the DAO, for open source projects in general to make documentation around various functions available. And part of that is like standards, right? Like accounting standards, you know, cross team knowledge, team specific knowledge, etc.
I would just want to mention that because you know there's loads going on in the forum, and when it comes to Maker Talent, I want to say that we have started a communications plan so we can talk to facilitators and see what other areas of concern. So we will be talking to each of them, and if we can have to go through another voting cycle, this is the thing that probably will be changing. There are no concerns about the roadmap, and I believe that most of the touch points that we are, you know, like addressing in our MIP, we all agree on that they are necessary. The level of contribution is something that is probably more difficult to, or the level of adoption is what it's the challenge here. So this is what we're going to be working on for the next cycle, if anything.
I think that, well, we have to think more about the support core units, because like what happens if there's just one core unit using that service? Is that okay? Or like the idea will be that most of the half of the core units are using that service. Like, I think that probably it should be answered before like having support core units onboarded, because like, what's the idea? What's the point? If we can, like, if we all agree that we have the freedom to decide which are the service providers that we want to use, then what's the objective we have as a DAO of onboarding one supporting core unit? That just to be used by one, by all of us, by half of us, like when it makes sense to onboard it, or just like using it as a service provider? I think that's an interesting discussion. I don't have the answer for that, but probably we should like understand what we want as a DAO regarding that.
I think that the best answer I can give you here is that are we tackling problems that we have on our day-to-days? Are we really working on something that we commonly understand that is a problem that needs to be addressed? I think that compensation and hiring and onboarding and having metrics to better forecast the people that we're going to need in the future is something that will make our lives easier and will make our scaling up process easier. And we all agree on that. After this discussion is, like what is the quality of the project that you're going to deliver that will make you use these services? So, it's not that you're going to be providing different projects to different core units. It's to be aligned on, do we have a problem here? Do we have a problem in terms of salaries, in terms of how we hire and how efficient we are hiring and the smart people we're bringing to the DAO? And if we all think that there's a problem here, this is what habilitates or makes the core unit, the supporting function core unit, relevant to us. Because otherwise, it just doesn't make sense. So the question is, are we working on relevant projects? Are we addressing real problems that we are having? If all the facilitators, they agree on that, then it makes sense. This is, the key question to me.
Right on. Well, it's been some really good discussion here today. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time, though. Let's keep these discussions and these ideas going in the forum. That's kind of the best place to debate these things for long term. Share the ideas that we're having so we can kind of learn from them later. So thank you everyone for joining us on this governance and risk call, and we'll see you again next week, same time.